Hi, Jen here, the Holistic Health Boss, your functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and personal training expert. And this week I am talking to you guys about if you're a night owl or not, because I talk to so many clients or potential clients that tell me all the time, even friends and family, that they're a night owl, and they usually have been their whole life. They're usually, and you guys might think that you are too, like you're the kind of person who just naturally stays up later. You get like a second wind at nighttime. Maybe you feel kind of wired but tired, and you really have trouble falling asleep, especially before midnight. And also, maybe you feel like you do your best work at nighttime, but I am here to tell you guys that that's just actually not normal. It's in our very DNA, and I don't believe that anybody is a true natural night owl as they say that they are. Specifically because there's new research that's coming out to prove this. Actually, this year, the first time ever study done on primal sleep was released. Basically, these researchers went out and they strapped Fitbit or tracking type of devices on people who live in hunter-gatherer populations, just like our primal ancestors did, and they collected all this data about their daytime habits and their sleep habits. So what we're finding is that in primal sleep, it is actually natural for us to go to bed about 2 hours after sunset, and then to naturally wake up about 20 minutes before sunrise. And that's all based upon like the sun setting and sun rising, like the exposure to light, as well as temperatures that are happening throughout the day. So that's basically how our body is made. We are what's considered a diurnal creature, which is a daytime dwelling type of creature, versus you are probably familiar with nocturnal creatures such as like maybe even your household cat, tigers, lions, things that live in the jungle that go, creep around at night. Those are your types of nocturnal creatures, and we are definitely not one of those. So there's no reason for us to actually be night owls. Our body wants to sleep, but there's something that's getting in the way. So let's talk about what that could be, because there's a couple of things. Like most people commonly know that things that disrupt our sleep are usually exposure to light at nighttime, not getting enough, like maybe exposure to the sun during the day, city noise that's happening, stress is another thing. But even when you work on all of those things, you may still be finding that you're having a hard time going to sleep. I've worked with a lot of clients that struggle with a lot of different sleep issues. And there's one certain thing specifically, actually three specific things, that you can't really see, hear, feel, or even know that's happening. And what I'm talking about is something called, what I call gut invaders, which is actually parasites, bacteria, and yeast overgrowth that can be affecting your sleep. And the reason that they can be affecting your sleep is because these organisms, parasites and bacteria and yeast, are actually nocturnal organisms. So when you're trying to go to bed, they're actually just getting the party started. So let me kind of set the scene for you and describe like basically what's happening with sleep and how these guys get in there and disrupt your sleep patterns. So typically, what regulates our sleep cycles and our wake cycles are two primary hormones, cortisol and melatonin. Now, cortisol is also your stress hormone, but it's something that's cyclical throughout the day. So cortisol is supposed to be at its highest in the morning time. So think like it's up here, it's supposed to be at its highest at its morning time. It actually reaches its peak a little bit after you wake up, and then it slowly tapers off throughout the day. So this gives you energy in the morning with your cortisol at the highest, and then it slowly tapers off throughout the day, kind of like the downward slope of like a roller coaster, an old school roller coaster, so that it's at its lowest point at nighttime, which allows you to go to sleep. As the sun starts to go down and you have less light exposure, that's when enters melatonin also. So as it starts to get darker outside, melatonin starts to increase in your body, and melatonin is what helps you kind of sleep soundly throughout the night. And then in the morning time, as the sun rises, there's a little bit more light coming into your room, you get more light exposure, melatonin goes down, and you can wake up again with cortisol. It's a perfect dance that these two hormones do together. However, when you have a gut invader, some type of parasite, bacteria, or yeast overgrowth, they can significantly disrupt these hormone patterns. One way, specifically with cortisol, is that these gut invaders, they basically create a lot of internal stress and chaos, and cortisol is your stress hormone. So when these parasites and bacteria or yeast overgrowth are starting to get active at nighttime because they're nocturnal, they're throwing that party in your gut and you weren't invited. They're spiking your cortisol levels, and that cortisol is what gives you that artificial energy at nighttime, which makes you feel wired but tired, or you get that second wind, or why you feel like you can do your best work at night usually. So then they start to disrupt just overall cortisol patterns, because now you get a reverse cortisol pattern where it's high at nighttime, which then disrupts what it looks like during the day. So it can make you feeling tired and fatigued during the day too, no matter how much sleep you actually got. You could be sleeping 8 or 9 hours, but just not feeling rested because your cortisol is bouncing all over the place. Now with melatonin specifically, what happens there is that your gut is where 80% about 80% of your melatonin is produced. So as these gut invaders are in there and they're creating all kinds of chaos and damage and wreckage, they are actually disrupting the production of melatonin. But there's actually two things that can be happening. So melatonin is not only our sleep hormone, but it's also a natural antioxidant. It's actually about 200 times more powerful than vitamin C. So whenever there's an infection present in the body and your body recognizes actually parasites and bacteria and yeast overgrowth as an infection, then that can cause really high amounts of melatonin. So again, this melatonin imbalance can disrupt the dance between cortisol and your sleep patterns. And then over a long period of time, as these gut invaders live in there for who knows how long we have them, sometimes months, days, weeks, years, whatever it is, and your body's pumping out all of this melatonin, they're creating damage and destruction in the colon, that can actually start to suppress your melatonin function. So when I run tests on clients, we can see this. We can either see if their melatonin is really high, which usually correlates with their stool sample test that they have some type of gut invader, or we see melatonin that's really low, which correlates again with the stool sample test with some type of pathogen that's probably been in there for a really long time. So this overall hormone disruption, what happens is it's a domino effect. And usually the next hormone that usually gets out of balance as a result of this is your thyroid. So cortisol and or adrenal function is closely related to thyroid function. Your adrenals, your hypothalamus, and your pituitary glands are all kind of this main control center that are telling your thyroid what to do. So if cortisol is all over the place and adrenals are in overdrive, then that's going to affect your thyroid levels. And one of the main symptoms of thyroid imbalance or hypothyroidism is actually insomnia. So if you have insomnia, you have to start asking the question, do I really have insomnia, or is there something bigger going on? Do I need to check my thyroid? And if my thyroid is out of balance, do I need to be checking also my adrenals and probably my gut function to see what's going on the inside that's creating this overall chaos and imbalance all to me? Sleep apnea is another example. So sleep apnea is another type of sleeping disorder that basically can be impacted or caused like through hypothyroidism or different thyroid disorders. And sleep apnea is where your air pathways are just obstructed at nighttime. So you're not breathing like normal and you kind of wake up because you stop breathing. Well, when you have hypothyroidism specifically, it can cause an enlargement of the tongue, which can then block those air pathways, and then you get diagnosed with sleep apnea. Well, some of the other correlating symptoms with sleep apnea are also lethargy, apathy, and constant fatigue, which again are also crossover symptoms of adrenal imbalance, thyroid imbalance, as well as gut dysfunction. So if you have sleep apnea, you might want to start asking the question again of what's really going on here. Do I need to check my thyroid, my adrenals, and something that might be going on in my gut that's like ensuing all of this damage and chaos in the first place? So again, I'm going to challenge you, like, you have to reconsider, if you think that you're a night owl, start asking yourself that question, like, are you really a night owl, or is there something something bigger to the picture, more pieces of the puzzle to start looking at, and start considering, like, testing your thyroid and testing your adrenals and looking at gut dysfunction to see if you have any parasites, bacteria, or yeast overgrowth. And if you guys are suspecting that something like this is going on, or you're not really sure, then I totally want to invite you guys to join me for an upcoming webinar that I have with Master Life Coach and Hashimoto's hypothyroidism thriver, Molly Hamill. And we're going to be giving a free webinar. The date has changed. It was September 8th. It's now September 13th. It's a Tuesday, called Your Gut, the Secret to Healing Your Adrenals and Your Thyroid. Because when I work with clients, we always work backwards. If they come to me with insomnia, if they come to me with thyroid issues or adrenal issues, we're always kind of working backwards to going, okay, like, where is this stemming from? And every single time, and every single client that I've worked with always has something going on in their gut. And when we address the gut, it ultimately starts to turn things around and they start feeling better. So if you guys want to join us for this webinar, again, it's called Your Gut, the Secret to Healing Your Thyroid and Adrenals. You can click on the link below to register, or you can go back to the email. That's where you got the video from. The links are in there too. It's going to be happening on September 13th at Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, which is 9 p.m. Eastern time. If you can't make the live webinar, go ahead and register anyways, and we'll be sending out the recording so that you can get all the information that you need to become your own health boss. Hope you guys found this helpful, and I'll talk to you next week.